Hello, my name is Gabriela and I am from CCRM Ministries, and I'm here to tell you my testimony. My testimony starts from when I was in my mother's womb. When I was in my mother's womb, my mom actually did not want me. She actually tried to do those remedies that they do back in our countries where they drink a lot of like cinnamon drinks just to abort the baby. She wanted to abort me because when she got pregnant with me, my father passed away. And so there was a lot of resentment and rejection towards me because I was a child that was going to be born out of a relationship that with a man who she loved so much that had passed away. And unfortunately, I was raised without a father, and being raised without a father affected the rest of my life, essentially, because not having the identity, not having a father in your life will really scar you, because when you're looking and you're growing up without a father, you seek love and you don't have it. And a part of that, a part in that time, I also was very rejected by a lot of my family along with my mother because of the fact that she had lost my father. I grew up with a lot of loneliness, but I didn't know that my father had passed away until I was about in 5th grade. So there was a lot of my mom was somebody who had a lot of compulsive fury, a lot of anger. And in my youth, it was very abusive. She was very abusive, physically and emotionally. She would talk down to me and she would tell me you're worthless. And, it really scarred my identity and my self-esteem and who I was as a young little girl. After that had happened, my mom, she abandoned me for some time. She abandoned me for some time after, she came here because it was really hard for her. And so she ended up being with a man who was very abusive to her, and he raised me practically. And then once I was in 5th grade, I basically realized that he wasn't my father. And that really impacted me because I thought that this man who had raised me was my father, but that was also, it created rejection in me because I never fully felt accepted by him in my youth. And as I grew up with that lack of identity, that loneliness, a lot of depression. I used to cut myself when I was in middle school just because I felt like nobody was there, like nobody listened to me, nobody loved me. I was consistently being told I was useless and I was garbage and I would never amount to anything, and I was going to get pregnant at a very young age by my mother. And as I grew up, once I was about in 6th grade, I got molested. And I think that impacted even more because it was very scarring as a little girl to be, touched by somebody. And it really is very invasive. And it's something that kind of haunts you as you grow up because you feel like you can never trust men, or that nobody is to be trusted because of that being done to you, especially at a very early age. It really impacted me. It caused a lot of sadness in me. I didn't really want to be around anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody. I would cry myself to sleep most nights because it was really hard for me to know that that had happened to me without my consent. It was something that is abuse, for children. And as I grew up, I was into the drugs. I was into the party life. I was just doing anything to fill the void. I had boyfriends to try to fill that void and that emptiness within my heart that I was lacking. And eventually I did end up in a relationship, a serious relationship for about 2 years. And he rejected me and was like, I don't want to be together anymore. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But that caused me to go to somebody else, and I ended up getting pregnant at the age of 17. Out of that rejection, out of that pain, I ended up being with somebody else, and I ended up getting pregnant at 17, and it was very hard. Throughout my middle school career as well, or time frame, I was homeless. I didn't have anywhere to live. My mother and my stepfather had separated, and during that time when they had separated, I would sleep at friends' houses, or sometimes I would be sleeping at abandoned homes. And I think that was very difficult because I had nowhere to go. And on top of nowhere to go, I felt alone. I felt empty. I felt depressed. I felt sad. I had anxiety, which then caused me to end up being pregnant. And at a very young age, I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the finances. I didn't have the means to take care of my eldest daughter. And it was very difficult times because I had to find all the resources I could in order to be able to provide for her. Her father at one point was in a lot of trouble, and he ended up going to jail for 6 months, which was very difficult because that led me to being a single mother. As somebody who is suffering of all these things of rejection, of lack of identity and lack of paternity, it's difficult to have to raise a child under those circumstances. And within having to raise her, after some time, I about a year into me separating from her father, from going to jail, I ended up meeting my second daughter's father. And when I met my second daughter's father, I fell in love with him, but it was very abusive. And I think with all of these things that had gone on from my youth all the way till I became older, it really impacted my heart. I think a lot of unforgiveness, a lot of, like I said, lack of identity, a lot of pain, a lot of sadness, a lot of sorrow was deeply enrooted into my heart. And with my daughter's father, my second daughter's father, there was a lot of, again, emotional abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, a lot of narcissistic traits, a lot of down talk. He would down talk me a lot, and it was very difficult for my daughters as well to have to watch that. And in that relationship, I was so in love with him, and I just wanted to be with him, that in the end, I was okay with him hurting me. I was okay with him doing these things to me. And there came a point in time in the relationship where the abuse got worse and worse and worse and worse, until it was a really bad argument, and he basically was under the influence, and he was concealed to carry, and he almost killed me. And in that moment, when he was like abusing me, and he almost killed me, it was time. Like within myself, I asked God, and I told him, I said, God, if you can get me out of this, then I will forever serve you for the rest of my life, because I was tired. I was so turned off at this point. My emotions are off. My whole life I had been suffering. I had to face suffering. I was in the streets. I was, out here trying to find refuge in men. I was going through all this loneliness, all this sadness, and then to be abused by my father's child, and then have my kids have to watch that was difficult. So at that point, it was like I felt dead in life, because my heart is so broken, and there's so much within me, and I can't heal that. At that point, I realized, and I had tried different things. I did like horoscope reads. I had looked into crystals a little bit as well, and with all of that, none of that filled the void. And I knew the answer. I had felt God's love before, and so I knew that it was time. And when going towards that, and saying that and declaring that with my mouth, that I needed him and that I needed him to rescue me, he did rescue me. And shortly after was how I got here, because somebody from CCRM Ministries evangelize me. It was one of the leaders from the ministry, and she invited me to her House of Peace. And House of Peace is an extension of our ministry, and it's very intimate. And she told me that I needed to come, that God had a word for me, that he wanted to speak to my heart. And at that time, I'm heartbroken. I had just gone through all these things with my daughter's father, and I'm ready to give up. Like I said, I felt dead in life. And she invited me to come to her House of Peace. And when I went to the House of Peace, the pastor was actually there. And I remember that when he prayed over me, he was speaking to my life. He was speaking to my situation. He was speaking to that lack of identity. He was speaking to that broken heart. He was speaking to everything that I had gone through, the fact that I felt like I wanted to throw the towel. He said everything. He read my mind of everything that I was feeling in my heart. And I remember that he prayed over me. And when he prayed over me, I felt the love of God shower my heart. I felt the warmth. I felt the fire of God in my heart, in my chest. And it was like a consuming fire, it's a burning fire, because I've never felt a love like that. I've never felt God's love in that way. And it was beautiful to feel that presence of God, because I needed it. God always, he gives you what you need. And I needed that at that time. Having gone through all of that, and to finally feel God's love was the best experience, the best thing that I could ever ask for. The best thing that I could ever ask for is being even in this ministry, is being a part of this ministry and having that relationship with God, learning how to have that relationship with God. Because without him, I was empty. Without him, I was lonely. Without him, I was scared. I was suffering of a lot of anxiety, a lot of like PTSD from that relationship, where somebody would like raise their arm at me, and I was like, I felt like I was gonna be hit, because I had been abused. And even in my childhood with being molested and having gone through all those things, like I didn't feel safe anymore. I never thought that I would feel peace again. And when I came and I started to have that relationship, I regained everything that the devil took away from me, that life, you could say, even took away from me. And God restored me. God restored my spirit. God restored my joy. He brought my sorrow to joy, and he gave me happiness. He gave me strength. He gave me courage. He's given me love. He's given me identity. I'm a daughter of this house, but I'm also a daughter of God. Most importantly, I know who I am now in Christ. And it's been a beautiful experience. It's been beautiful being a part of this ministry. It's been a beautiful journey. It's not easy, but with God, anything is possible. And with community, and this ministry has given me a family. And so I definitely encourage all those who are seeking a place to worship, a place to have a relationship with God, a place to have communion where you need support. I encourage you to come out and be a part of this ministry. No religion here, just God and a relationship with the Lord, which is the most important thing. And so definitely I invite you to come out and have your own encounter with God, and be able to find refuge in the Lord.